Welcome to the world of Rebirth, Carved in Blood. In this video, I'll be your guide as we explore the structure of the game board and the turn sequence. The game board is divided into 3 distinct zones. In front of each player, we have their player zone. This is where players place their decks, the discard pile, and all the resource cards acquired during the game. The central zone is known as the battlefield, which is further divided into 3 areas. From the perspective of the first player, the areas are identified from left to right as town square, main street, and courtyards. Except for resource cards, the cards that players put into play are placed in one of these 3 areas. The cards on the battlefield form 3 different formations. The Allied formation represents the non-resource cards under a player's direct control. These cards are known as allies or allied characters. The Enemy formation, on the other hand, comprises the non-resource cards under the opponent's control, also referred to as enemies or enemy characters. Interestingly, a player's allied formation is simultaneously the enemy formation of their opponent, and vice versa. Lastly, we have the neutral formation, consisting of cards not directly controlled by any player. Within each area of the battlefield, a player's allies are always placed in the section closest to them, while enemies occupy the farthest section. Neutral characters, as you may have guessed, reside in the central part of the area. Whenever a player plays a Slayer card from their hand, it always enters the battlefield as an ally. Likewise, when an Abomination card is played, it enters as a neutral character. Keep in mind, though, that certain effects and abilities can alter the formation of Slayer and Abomination cards during the course of the game. When this occurs, the affected cards are moved to the designated section of their new formation. Now, let's delve into the structure of the game turn. But before we do, it's crucial to familiarize ourselves with some fundamental concepts that apply to all cards in the game. A card is considered unlocked when it is oriented vertically, while it is locked when horizontally placed. Unlocking a card involves rotating it to a vertical position, whereas locking a card entails rotating it horizontally. The game turn consists of 7 distinct phases that must be carried out in order. First, we have the harvesting phase. This phase is only executed during the first 5 turns of each player. Here, the active player obtains a Nocturnus resource card. In the upcoming videos, we'll delve into managing the resource cards acquired during the game. Next, we move on to the planning phase. During this phase, players draw a card from their main deck. However, the first player always skips this phase during their first turn. Now, let's proceed to the first organization phase. Here, players have the opportunity to play cards and perform transmutations. The most crucial phase is the supremacy phase. In this phase, the active player checks if their allies hold supremacy in one or more areas of the battlefield. For each area where the player's allies have supremacy, the player can obtain a resource card from their resource deck, other than Nocturnus. Additionally, the player can choose to attack one of the other 2 formations in that area. We'll explore how to determine supremacy and resolve attacks in the upcoming videos. Moving on, we reach the second organization phase. This phase mirrors the first organization phase entirely. Next up is the intervention phase. During this phase, players unlock all their allies and resource cards. Lastly, we have the victory conditions check phase. In this phase, the active player checks if their enemies have supremacy in 2 or more areas of the battlefield. If this condition is met, the game ends immediately, and the opponent wins. Otherwise, the turn concludes, and the game proceeds to the opponent's turn. That covers all about the game board structure and the turn sequence of Rebirth, Carved in Blood. In the next video, we'll explore how to play and transmute cards, determine supremacy, and resolve attacks.